Hi, welcome to Video Creators Lounge. My name is Brooke. Today we have Tori Clay with us. She's a multi-talented actress, model, and musician. Thank you for coming, Tori. How are you today?
Hi, I'm doing well, thank you, and thank you for having me.
So, Tori, I know that you run the Screaming Ostrich Film Festival. You're involved in acting, music in the area. Before we get into all of that, can you tell me a little bit where you're from, your background, how you got into creative arts?
Sure. Started with being born in Germany. I worked in a number of people call regular jobs. And my last one was about a 17-year career in the post office. And I got burned out. I decided I had to do something with the creative side of my brain. And by turns, that led me first to a course that I saw advertised locally on creativity. So I took it, and the course was based on that book called The Artist's Way. And the premise of that book is basically you write something every day. You get up every morning at the same time, you set aside, you write something. It doesn't make any difference if you know what to write or not. You can write a whole page of, I don't know what to write. But it's really cathartic, And it brings thoughts that were in the back of your mind to the forefront. And you find yourself writing some decent prose. And so in the class, that's what they said. They said, oh, you're a poet. You do these great word pictures. You should do slams. So I started doing slams, spoken word events. And there was somebody in the class who was a member of a comedy improv troupe. So they kept inviting me to attend it, And I finally decided I'd go. And you know how it works when you go to comedy improv. They pull people out of the audience to bring up on stage and make a fool out of. And so they picked me. And I went up on stage. And I stayed there for the rest of the show. I was having a ball, and I was in my element, Everybody was laughing. We were having a great time. And I became a member of that troupe. We toured, and I directed it sometimes, and that led me to acting. I got that performer thing going in my blood that I hadn't had since I was just a little kid when I tried to do music a little bit. I saw an audition coming up for a local film. So I think I'll go for it. It's something that I knew I wanted to do since I was a small child. And so I went to this audition and I got the gig. It wasn't any big deal. It was just a small film, and it had a couple of people in it that were regarded as kind of big shots because they both had national commercials. I think one was a McDonald's and other one had something to do with cars. I don't remember. Here we are doing this shoot in this apartment, and these two actors are in the foreground of the scene, and the director kept pushing them back and bringing me forward. I'm sure that was much to the consternation of those other two. And finally, the director said to me, do you want some lines? And, sure, what actor wouldn't want lines, So he scribbled something out for me and gave me 5 minutes to look at it, and went back, and I amazed both him and me. We got it in the first take. I memorized it instantly. I hit my mark. I delivered it competently. And so the result was, do you want some more lines? And that went on for a couple of times, and he kept pushing the others back, and he made me kind of the focus of that scene. And I left there, walking on air, say, hey, I always knew I could do this, and now I proved it to myself.
Sounds very encouraging that initial push that you were really doing a great job.
Yeah.
So from there, did you find yourself looking for other parts, looking for other roles?
Yeah.
And what kind of roles did you look for after that?
Again, I was so new, but I saw a audition being advertised for theater. So I went to that and I got a gig. And it was being directed by somebody who was actually on television a lot. They had an ongoing role in one of the police procedural dramas that were on TV at the time. I can't remember the name of it or his name. But I got this gig and I played this Jesus guy who was like a custodian in a home for mentally challenged children. And they pretty much gave me free rein to come up with my character. So what I did for my character is, I'm going to date myself again now, but back then we had what we used to call Walkmans that played cassette tapes. And nowadays, of course, everybody has iPods and their phones and stuff. But so you'd see people on the subway, with these big Walkmans and their headphones on. A lot of people used to sing. So I took that for my character. So Jesus was one of those guys that drives everybody crazy on the subway and in the store singing off key, and so I'm pushing my broom around. I'm singing, yeah, I know you love me. And they dug it, and the weirdest thing that I did with that show, actually it's not weird, but I exhibited way too many guts than I had a right to have, was when I went home and I was reading the script and I saw what I called a missed loop on the emotional roller coaster that play was. So, never having done it before, I wrote a scene. And when I went back, I brought it in, and the director liked it, and they used my ideas. That, again, made me feel terrific,
Yeah, so you really had a lot of kind of immediate success and success down the line when you tried many different variety of things. Were there any challenges that came up when you applied to certain roles, or even when you branched out to other kinds of theater?
Sure there were. First of all, if it's not obvious to anybody watching, although it probably is, I'm a transgender female. So we're talking about all things that I had been doing while living as a male. And I was honestly always putting on an act. I was kind of twisted inside and subject to a lot of depression and thoughts about self-harm, shall we say. Although it's kind of amazing that even though I lived like that, I was never in my life any kind of a substance abuser, because for some reason I had this weird disconnect that people that get addicted to things don't have, which was between, I feel bad, I feel rotten, I have to get high, I have to get drunk. I never put those two together. Thank goodness. If I did, I probably wouldn't be here now. So that was one big challenge. I wear hearing aids now, but back then I still had pretty decent hearing for the first few months of my career. And although I was wearing a milder hearing aid at that time, but then it kind of took a steep drop. And so I wear much more powerful ones now. But back then, it was not really much of a challenge hearing. So my challenges were based on, how do I put it, not really knowing what I was fighting, but I was fighting something inside, and not having any experience, not having any training, not really knowing what I was doing, just doing everything on instinct and intuition.
I was curious, because of the challenges that you faced and because of really just the really wide variety of all the things you were trying to do and your success with that, like what kept you going? What kept you like really trying and pushing yourself further?
In a word, results. After those first two things, I started answering every audition that I saw. At that time, we had several newspapers that don't exist in Boston anymore, and they were loaded with audition notices, as well as some online sites. And I was just putting in for everything. And I had an amazing batting average. I was getting like half of the things I auditioned for, And so that just made me feel better and better about my abilities.
I wanted to ask you also, kind of switching over, and we can come back to other things you've worked on as well, but about the Screaming Ostrich Film Festival and how you got involved. Kind of, if you give us a background on what the festival is and the genesis of it, and also talk a little bit about how you got involved as well.
Sure. First of all, a slight correction. While most festivals are called film festivals, ours is called the Screaming Ostrich Filmmakers Festival. The reason for that is we tried to put the emphasis on the content producers and giving them the best experience possible, having valuable seminars and panels that they could benefit from, and of course, making an effort to give them a voice if they haven't had one in the past.
That sets you apart from a lot of other festivals.
Yeah, I think it does. I know the reception that we've had from our content producers has been heartwarming. They've appreciated the extra effort that we've put in for them. So a couple of friends of mine had actually conceived it, and they were starting to move forward with it when they had a falling out. And the remaining one invited me to be the partner in it. And he would remain the producer, and I would be the director. And sorry for this public, I would be the face of it. So that was the genesis of my involvement in it. And we found that we had a really magical partnership. We had so many ideas that complemented each other's ideas. We worked well together. We had a lot of trust in each other's judgments. We were able to do things independent of each other, knowing that they'd be the right thing to do. And so we made a lot of progress. And so we had our first festival in October, 18, 19, and 20. And so it ran for 3 days and nights over 4 venues in Boston and Somerville and Arlington. And we had great panels. We had great question and answer sessions. I bestowed 2 Screaming Ostrich Lifetime Achievement Awards on 2 very deserving people in the entertainment community. All in all, it was a great success. And we had content from literally all around the world submitted to us. And stuff that made the cut was from, I think it was Iran, and some from Sweden, and some from one of the countries in the Russian bloc that I can't remember which one it was.
In reading and learning from you also, before now about the Screaming Ostrich Filmmakers Festival, I learned that it really is about like promoting unknown artists, people that are much lesser known, haven't really had a chance to be in the spotlight yet. Can you speak a little bit about why that's so important to your mission, and also for you personally, why that's important to you?
Basically, sympathy, empathy. As a performer, I struggled with recognition. And so I know what they're feeling. I've also worked with filmmakers on projects that went nowhere. that really deserved to go forward. I should also mention that our festival is a not-for-profit venture. We set very, very low fees via filmfreeway.com for submission. We had shows that were free, open to the public, and it was a matter of both me and my producer partner, John McGinnis, both being passionate about the whole video content process and film and just visual arts in general, and it was a natural outgrowth of that.
Yeah, what's next for Screaming Ostrich? You were telling me about.
Wow, there's a lot. We met with so much success in our first one that we actually had a second one, which was kind of a pop-up event for one evening last month, December. It went well, and now we have several more in the planning stages. The first one that's going to happen is, I don't have a date for it yet, but people that are seeing this can always go to our website, screamingostrich.com, to find out the latest. And I want to make it clear, it's screaming like, not streaming like most things online. So screamingostrich.com. And next festival is going to be in the spring. And I have a corporate partnership going on for it. And this festival is going to be all LGBT and all free admission to the public. And I'm going to be doing it in conjunction with Fenway Health in Boston.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And the one following that will probably be one that we're planning on doing with and for teenagers. In our first festivals, we had very simple rules, which were no porn, no hate, toxic content, and be over 18 to submit, with the proviso that if you had a parental consent signed, you could participate. So now what we're going to do is have something that's strictly for the teenagers, which will be probably the second one that we do. We're also planning one for the first time in New Hampshire, and we're also already in the planning stages for the next multiple day one in the coming October.
Do you have any kind of parameters, or what's allowed? You were saying some things that aren't allowed. Are there any kind of like guidelines or parameters that people should know about if they're thinking of submitting, and how they could go about that?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that, because I left out probably the single most important part of it, which is our festival is for short content, up to 15 minutes long. Although we did include a piece somewhat longer, and we will make exceptions from time to time, all merit-based. Yeah, we're a festival for short content up to 15 minutes long. And other than that, we don't really have any guidelines, because unlike most festivals, we will take content that's been exhibited in the past. We'll take content online, we'll take streaming, we'll take webisodes, we'll take animation. There's really very little that we won't accept for consideration.
It's great. It makes it much more accessible, too, for a wide variety of people to apply.
Right.
So.
And everything that we show is also eligible for an award.
Yeah, that's great. Very cool. So do you have kind of like one or more pieces of advice for someone who's looking to apply to the Screaming Ostrich, something that you would tell an indie filmmaker who's thinking about being part of it?
Well, the first thing I'd say is keep an eye on screamingostrich.com website to follow along and see when submissions open up for our next festivals. I'd also mention we have a Facebook group called Screaming Ostrich, and everybody is welcome to join that, and you'll be getting notices from it as things are happening with the festival. I would say to content producers, don't give up.
Yeah.
If you believe you have a vision, shoot for it. You know, try to get that vision in front of the public eye. Try to show us what you're thinking. You know, there were people that I spoke to at the festivals that said things to me like, oh, yeah, geez, I wish I tried to do that. I always had this idea to do a film where, and they'd go into some detail about some kind of a scene or a plot, you know, that they had envisioned. And, you know, everybody's different. Everybody has, you know, at least one unique idea, you know, and they should have pursued it. Some of the things I heard were just wonderful that would make very interesting things to see on a screen.
You mentioned about having panelists at a lot of your events. Can you tell me a little about who's been a panelist in the past or who you see maybe being a future panelist at one of your events?
Yeah, our non-film stuff started on opening night, where we were on the big stage at the Armory, and I brought up two of my friends from Connecticut, Stu Nunnery and his girlfriend, Laurie Jonathan. And Stu, like me, severely hearing impaired, musician, SAG-AFTRA actor, like me, just got out of it, you know, was away from it for decades, and then finally couldn't take it anymore. It was just the pull of coming back into the biz was too much, and he had to start doing it again. And Stu is a person who's had hit records. To this day, he had the number one song in Brazil. He had a song that's still in the top 10 from decades ago in, I believe it's Columbus, Ohio. And he's a very talented musician and writer. And what he did was, he and Laurie did a performance consisting of music that was connected to this wonderful, heartwarming screenplay that they had written together about how they met and how their life has been going forward. And so they would intersperse reading from that screenplay with doing these wonderful songs that were connected to it.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. You know, it was so touching and beautiful. And that was followed by the first Lifetime Achievement Award, which I presented to a guy who's local and is probably like 2 or 3 degrees away from anybody that has pursued acting in Greater Boston. His name is Sam Adelson, and he would make a fantastic podcast guest. He has such a wonderful story, which I went into detail about in the introduction of him and presented him with his Lifetime Achievement Award. And then he went on to give a speech extemporaneously, about 10 minutes or so, that again, there wasn't a dry in the house after that either. You know, he was so inspiring. I mean, when I describe Stan, I just call him like this little ball of love. You know, he's this little guy, and he's in his 90s, and he doesn't have a crossword for anyone, you know. And so both of those presentations were followed with questions and answers from the audience, you know, and both of them being so accomplished and so interesting made for wonderful panel that really didn't even need any moderation. You know, it was just a matter of people in the audience posing their questions.
It's amazing.
Then the next panel, which I moderated, was the next day in the afternoon, and Stu and Laurie were on that. I also had this incredible 16-year-old, he's a SAG-AFTRA actor, plus he's in, it's either the Directors Guild or the Screenwriters Guild already.
Oh, wow.
And it was one of his films that I showed in the festival that won an award also. And he was there along with his co-star, who was also a teenager. And they gave all this very, of course, youthful slant on their answers, which is a perspective that normally wouldn't be present at a film festival like that, and they were terrific. I also had Chuck Slavin, who is an officer in the SAGAFTRA local. Legally, of course, he can't represent the union at the board, but he could give his insight from a personal viewpoint on a lot of things. I also had one of the other filmmakers from there who made an incredible film, which was his first film ever. And it was a film that really can't be shown in too many places because although it wasn't porn, there was a lot of nudity in it. And usually when you say nudity, people think, oh, there's naked women in it. But this had something for everyone. There were plenty of naked men and plenty of naked women. And there wasn't any modesty involved at all. And there was also a lot of blood and gore in it. And it was also longer than 15 minutes. I believe it was a half-hour film. And it had a totally unique concept. And it was his first time filmmaking. And keeping in mind that our festival ran October 18 through 20, we're knocking on the door of the Halloween season at that point. So we went for tie-ins to it, just like on opening night was the night that we showed all our spooky, bloody kind of things, with the exception of this one, which was too long, which we used on closing night, because there really aren't many theaters that would allow a film like that to be shown.
I'm interested actually to ask you about the younger 16-year-old and his co-star, but also like what drives you and also John probably and other people involved to like highlight those younger artists.
Well, the biggest thing is one of the basic premises of Screaming Ostrich was to give voices to the voiceless, and teens generally don't have a way of getting their work out.
Right.
And this is a young kid. I plug him. His name is Brendan Egan. And you'll be hearing from this guy for sure in years to come. He has a very clear voice and a lot of talent managing a set as a director. And he was just really somebody that opened my eyes to what's possible at that age. And that's what put me in mind of, geez, I should see if I can find other prodigious teenagers like this and help them get into the public eye a bit,
Right. So kind of switching over again to a different topic, but I know that you're really branching into music again. You did music when you were younger and took a long break and are starting to do that again. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what you've been doing musically.
Oh, now you're really warming the cockles of my heart. Because, it's literally the most fun that I'm having in life right now. I can't believe that I'm saying this, that I'm doing this. But when I was a teenager, everybody in the neighborhood played guitar, everybody wanted to be a Beatle. And so, I met a guy down the street and he played. And so we started playing together. It's like, hey, we got a band, Of course, it went nowhere. Tragically, one of the people in it died. So that was a big part of it, not going anywhere. I also tried going out as a duo. I advertised and found a woman to front me to sing, and I just played guitar for her. And we played a party where there was a bunch of musicians, and they stole her. She was so good that was the first and last time we performed together. And my life circumstances changed. I mean, when I started teaching myself how to play guitar, I played 12, 14 hours a day. I mean, that was all I had, you know. Then I wasn't able to do that anymore. I got away from it, and depression got a better hold of me, and I kept my guitars, you know, and I would play for my own enjoyment and my own frustration, off and on, more off than on. And then about 6 months ago, it was during the summer, a friend's band was playing, and they actually dared me to do one of my songs during the set break. And, you know, being a professional entertainer, SAG-AFTRA actor, you know, I didn't have any compunctions about it, you know, and I grabbed the guitar and I did it. I fully expected, you know, the crowd to disperse, you know, just go scurrying away when I started. And much to my surprise, they didn't. You know, more people came, and it was so exciting for me to see people there just grooving to my own original stuff, that one song became 5.
Right.
And I haven't stopped since. The following week, I did a talent show, and I got the same kind of amazing reception. And the person that got me into the show told me that a week later, the people that worked there were still going around singing my song, even though they never heard it before. That really made me feel
that's
good.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I've been going around playing like these open mics and things, and continuing to write new songs. And a producer really likes one of my songs in particular, and is bringing me into the studio this month to cut it. So that'll be my first ever record. Might be other songs of mine involved with it as well. And
That's awesome.
I just played my biggest gig yet. I played a benefit for the Boston Food Bank, which was a bunch of musicians, including me, and I had about a half an hour to do my own stuff. It was wonderful, you know. I mean, the audience was right there with me. They were swaying with my music and clapping in time with it, you know, and dancing. And in that half hour, I did patter and segues and everything, and I felt really pro and happy about what was happening. My stuff is kind of complicated, so the other musicians can't really jump in that much. But a couple of times, the bass player jumped in and the drums jumped in, and that was just so fabulous for me to hear that extra depth to the sound.
Definitely.
You know, that was thrilling to me, literally. And then what was probably the coolest part of the whole evening was when it was over and we're all packing up our gear, you know, and getting ready to leave the venue. And I'm talking to some of the musicians, and these are mostly people that have been in the biz a long time, you know, been in a lot of bands, played all over the place. And they all thought that I was one of these seminal Boston rockers from the days of the Channel and the Rat and Chet's Last Call and you know, the Kenmore clubs, everything, you know. And yeah, sure, I went to some of those places as a kid, but that was just to be in the audience. I never played any clubs like that. And so to have them think that about me was really complimentary.
It seems like this is a whole new way you've gotten into a broader part of the creative community. So you were kind of in acting and filmmaking and stuff, but you're broadening out now to being really a musician and in the Boston area. So that's pretty amazing. I had a question going back to your background a little bit. I know that your stage name is Tori Clay. Can you tell us a little bit about how that name came about?
Sure. the funny thing is, I never intended to change my name. I never wanted a stage name. But when I started acting, as a male, of course, I was born Victor Campisi. And then I got this idea one time, just out of the blue, of using Vic Clay. I didn't do anything with it, but shortly after I got the idea, I found myself taking in a play in a theater, and it was intermission, and turned out the playwright was in the seat next to me, and it was schmooze time, and we introduced each other, and me being a wise ass, when I said my name, I said, yeah, I'll try it. And I said, hi, I'm Vic Clay. And he goes exactly like this. He goes, wow, what a great name for an actor. And I was dumbfounded. I said, geez, I got something there, because I saw it as a metaphor, because I see myself as an actor that is clay, to be molded by the directors, by the characters, And I looked it up with the union. There was no other Vic Clay, although there is one other Vic Clay who's a big-time country music record producer. But that didn't prevent me from using it, so I immediately adopted it. And back then, I had my email with MSN. And so I was able to get the email of mold me at MSN, So I had the metaphor, I had the simile, and I had this really memorable connection between my name and my email. So I would attend all these events for actors locally, I'd meet directors and producers and whatever. And hi, I'm Vic Clay. And I swear to you, Brooke, 2 years later, I would meet these same people at an event, and they'd always be like, oh, I remember you, Vic Clay, mold me, And so that's worth millions to an entertainer, to have something that connects like that and is such a easy thing to lock into your brain, And then, of course, when I came out as Tori, I still kept Clay, and it still worked, although by then I had switched to Gmail, so I don't really have the simile anymore because it's mold me at Gmail, but at least I still have the metaphor, and it still works like a charm. And the best thing about it is no one else had mold me, so I didn't have to be mold me G49AB, it was just plain mold me, And I'll never let that go, And from there, that was one of the biggest changes I made that really sunk into my own brain. That, all right, this is getting more professional now, You were just going along as Victor Campisi, and now you're Vic Clay, This is progress, And ironically, that's wrong. No one does stage names anymore. It doesn't matter how long or how to pronounce your name is or how many hyphens in it. It just doesn't make a difference anymore, which is actually a good thing in the world.
So kind of going along with some of the things you've told me before about upcoming events, there are a few events where you're highlighting specific groups, and we talked a little about the teens. Is there anything you'd like to add about why you're interested in helping the LGBT community and how you see yourself as kind of a leader for that event?
Sure. First of all, obviously, I'm a member of the community, a community that's accepted me with open arms. I can't say that for about many other communities. One thing I'd like to make different about ours is, there's other LGBT film festivals, and they're usually all like LGBT, You know, we're always the tiny minority. And I'm going to make all efforts to have this festival be LGBT. You know, I want to get the T to be the most prominent and
Yes.
content in it, you know. And as a member of the community, it would make me proud if I was able to pull that off. And I know I have transgender acquaintances who would love to get into entertainment, but they feel like it's beyond their reach because of who they are. And maybe I'll be able to inspire some people and show them that it's not. You know, it's like when I was coaching. You know, when I came out, which was just about 4 years ago, I was a moderately successful SAG-AFTRA actor. I had a resume that was long and varied with about 70 films, 25 plays, dinner theater. I had a hit commercial on ESPN. I worked with major A-list stars, and I mean worked with them, not just do background in a scene with them. And I had credits in more than acting. I had them directing, producing, writing, shooting, coaching on set, coaching off set. I did stunts. I did precision driving. I did stunt driving. I did stand-up comedy. I did comedy improv, singer, dancer, musician. I can go on, you know, but I did virtually everything that you can do for the big or small screen or stage or radio, you know, either behind them or in front of them. But when I came out as transgendered, the first thing that happened was my agent dropped me for it. And then I wasn't really able to get work. I got a play, which was just a small ensemble cast play. We ran for a month on stage in Boston. I had such a wonderful time performing on stage again, which I hadn't done for so long, and I was rewarded for it. You know, the Boston Globe rated that play in the top 10 best of Boston theater for 2016.
Wow.
You know, and that was ahead of giant shows with giant names in it. And I knew that I was really doing a great job because there was one time I was doing a monologue. I was really breaking down. I was solo on stage in the spotlight, and I literally made my audience forget that they were watching an actor in character to the point where they yelled out that they loved me to cheer me up. You know, they forgot that it was acting. And what we call that in the business is broaching the fourth wall. But they didn't just broach it, they shattered it. I'll tell you, I felt like I got an award that night. You know, I knew I had them in the palm of my hand all the time with that piece. But so that was such a wonderful experience, you know. I always had this ability to reach an audience, you know. And it's like when I was a coach, you know, I never intended to coach anybody as an actor, but people saw me in different things in films, and they'd come up to me and say, well, how did you do this? How did you get there? You know what? And they'd ask me to teach them how to act. And I would say, no, I'm not an acting teacher. I'm not qualified for that. I don't have that kind of training. I'll help you if you want, but I'm not an acting teacher. So that led to people keeping repeatedly offering money that I said, well, look, I can coach. I can't teach you how to act. And that became so rewarding to me because somebody would come to me with a piece and I would work with them on it, and I would bring things out of them that even they didn't know were there. you know, and also, you know, when you help someone like that, it also helps your own acting, you know, amazingly enough. I found it helped me helping other people like that.
Did you have anything that you learned from one of your students that specifically stood out during one of those times where you were teaching, but you felt you learned from them as well?
Actually, no, I can't say that I learned anything specific from a student, but when you work hard with someone to get something out of them, it unblocks things in yourself, and it facilitates you getting things out of yourself.
Definitely. How do you see the future of the Screaming Ostrich Film Festival? What do you see?
Honestly, when I came aboard and it was so small, we were originally envisioning like one, maybe at the big stretch, 2 days of doing it. It just blew up on us. You know, there were so many people that wanted to show the world what they did, and it just made us all just so happy about being able to help people like that. And that's the best part of it for me, you know. I believe I mentioned that we're a not-for-profit venture, so everybody that's involved with Screaming Ostrich is a volunteer. You know, it's just that we're all passionate about the medium, and we're passionate about trying to help some people that need it, you know, people that need a leg up in the biz community. And that's by far the biggest motivation that we have. So down the road, we are really hoping to continue to grow. The bigger we get, the more people we can help. It's why originally we thought it would be like an annual thing in October. But the first October went so well that we did it again last month. And now we have the teen one, the LGBT one, and the New Hampshire one already in planning stages, plus the next October one, which we will probably add at least one day onto it.
That's great. I'm really looking forward to all of those events. And what does the future hold for you next, aside from Screaming Ostrich?
Aside from Screaming Ostrich, like I was saying before, the biggest things that's the most fun in my life right now is music. I have a couple of music performances coming up, one this month, one next month. Playing these open mics all over the place. I'll be making my first record this month. I'm continuing to write songs. Funny thing about me musically, it's been 5 times now, all different people, that people have told me that I remind them of Lou Reed, of all people, you know? And I don't even have a Lou Reed song in my repertoire, although everybody probably thinks I do Walk on the Wild Side, you know? But, and they all, amazingly, all followed it up by saying they meant it as a compliment, not like I was trying to compliment him, you know? And I'd like to capitalize on that, I think. But the question that brings up is, how in the world am I going to stand out to promote myself if I'm just one of the zillions and zillions of old, deaf, transgender, female, singer-songwriter guitarist with a Lou Reed vibe?
Yeah, so common.
Yeah, you know, I mean, they're everywhere you turn.
I know like 7 of you. Yeah, that's really awesome. So I'm looking forward to seeing your music in the future, and hopefully we can do some here as well in the studio.
I would love to do that.
So
another funny thing I should mention that surprises people when I play is, because I'm deaf, I can't hear myself when I play. I have no idea what I sound like.
Well, it's a good excuse. No, that sounds good. Is there anything else that we missed that is coming up that you'd like us to talk about?
I'm going to clean my sock drawer. Other things I have coming up. Yes, actually. I was just invited for one of those rare things. It doesn't happen to me much anymore. I was just invited to audition for some theater work, which is a theater festival. And I was told when I was invited that if I didn't get a role, that they would like me to MC the whole thing.
Oh, wow.
So I'd be looking forward to that. And also next month, I'll be directing a short play in another short play festival.
Very nice. That's awesome. Well, I can't wait to see all of your upcoming work and your music. Thank you, Tori Clay, for coming in today. I wish you best of luck with all your future endeavors.
Thank you for having me, Brooke. I had a fantastic time today. You're terrific. Your crew is terrific. I'll be looking forward to coming back and doing the music one with you at some point soon.
Thanks so much. From Video Creators Lounge, this is Brooke Lambert signing off.